Good evening, and we'll now return to open session. First, I'll announce reportable actions taken in closed session. In regards to item 5C1 and 2, the graduation waivers are part of the consent agenda. And in regards to item 5C3, the board met in closed session to discuss the appeal of the denial of the interdistrict transfer for student E. A motion was made by Trustee Ronish and seconded by Trustee Saavedra, and the board unanimously approved to uphold the denial of the interdistrict transfer. I would now like to ask for a motion to approve the agenda, including the time limits.
So moved.
Is there a second, please?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we're going to start the meeting. I'm going to ask for a volunteer. If there is a board member that wishes to volunteer to read the board norms. Seeing none, I think I'll be reading them since you did it last time. So I'll go over these norms. This is what the board will review at each meeting in order to help keep our board meetings most efficient. We will come prepared and fully present and engaged, deliberate effectively, and listen openly without interrupting each other. Work collaboratively and strive for consensus, maintain perspective with a sense of humor, not repeat each other or ourselves, not have side conversations, give full attention to the proceedings, no cell phone use, focus on the best interest of all students, and commit to no surprises. Thank you. So now we'll move on to the consent agenda. First, I want to ask, before I ask if any board members want to remove anything from the consent agenda, I want to ask if we have any public comment on the consent agenda. Okay, I see no comment on the consent agenda. So now I'd like to open it up to the board as well as the student trustees. If there's any items on the consent agenda that you'd like us to remove in order to discuss before voting. Okay, before I move on to ask for a motion of the consent agenda, somebody raised their hand. I'm going to ask, did you have a comment on the agenda, the consent agenda?
That was me.
Oh, I thought I saw this young man raising his hand.
I'm kind of confused about what the consent agenda is.
Okay.
Speak about the budget cuts today.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, the consent agenda, for clarifications, are generally routine items that are lumped together, and so we take a vote on those as a lump moving forward. You good? Okay. Okay. So can I ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. All right, so now we move on to the student trustee reports, and I'm going to ask Maddie to go first tonight.
I'm not sure how this
You do have to remember to turn them on.
Yes. Okay. So first off, we are into the last 2 weeks leading up to our ASB leadership elections at Drake. So this week is when students will be campaigning. So that mostly consists of hanging posters and talking to people. We have pretty strict rules about how much you can spend on campaigns in order to keep them equitable, and making sure that all posters are approved first so that there are no posters that are being hateful towards other people running, all just positive posters that are supposed to promote yourself. So candidates are hanging those around the school this week. And then candidates have also written speeches, which were also approved, and then filmed those and sent them in. And then on next Wednesday, so a week from this Wednesday, during our tutorial, those will be shown within our PTV, and then after that, students will vote, and they'll use paper ballots, which we've been using for the last 2 years because we found that when we used an online ballots, voter turnout was very low. So paper ballots during advisory, when you have to be there anyway, raises voter turnout a lot. So people will be voting. This year, we have only 2 positions uncontested, and one of them is the sophomore class president. So that's like none of the major ASB president or ASB vice presidents roles are going uncontested, which is really great. And we're lowering those, how many are uncontested each year, and making sure that we have about 40% of 60% people running are already in leadership and 40% aren't, which is a really a really good ratio compared to our last year's. And then also our men's varsity soccer team got to the semifinals in NCS, which is a record for Drake, so everyone's very excited about that. And then also one of our wrestlers placed 5th in their weight group in NCS, and I believe that's also a first for Drake, so celebrating our sports people.
Thank you. I hope you let Noah know about the 60-40. I'm sure your predecessor really pushed for that. So it came around pretty quickly. So very good. That's great.
I've been updating him.
Yeah, I think we'll have to send a social media text or something later after the meeting. Thank you. Charlotte.
Okay, so one thing that's happening at Tamalpais is Team is having a fundraiser tomorrow night. They have partnered with Farm Burger, a place in San Anselmo, and a portion of all the food and drinks will go to the program. The money will help fund one of their camping trips, hopefully one of the big ones. And I highly recommend it for any of you guys to come. You'll get some delicious food and get to know any of the team members. So it's at 882 Sir Francis Drake Boulevard, San Anselmo. You can just Google Farm Burger if you want to go. And then in IS, this week is Suicide Awareness Week, following the events of a couple weeks ago. So far, only the freshmen have completed the training in their advisory because their advisory is on Monday. But the rest will complete their training soon, and I'm excited to complete it myself. And then also in advisory coming up, the junior advisory will have the Pathways application presentation by Alyssa, who's here today. Tamalpais juniors who have known to apply in high numbers relative to their class size in the past will be applying soon, and hopefully some of them will get in. So I'm excited for that presentation, and hopefully we will learn a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Devana, did I pronounce your name correctly? Very good, thanks. You have something happening Thursday, as I recall.
Yes, so we just got back from break, and on Thursday is our open house. And during our open house, we'll be having community building activities with the parents and students and the staff. And that will consist of, my counselor calls it the fallout shelter activity, and the staff will be participating with the parents and students on building how our values and our morals affect our how we actually act upon things. And this week we're basically just it's our last grade. It's the last week of our grading period, and me and my fellow classmates will be finishing our projects, our classwork, and other stuff, and preparing for our finals. That's all.
Thank you, very helpful. Thank you. Kara?
So everyone at TAM enjoyed our Valentine's Day off because of the rain and flooding on Miller. So it was a nice preemptive break. Friday was pretty rough, knowing you had one day of school, this like kind of random day, but it was fun. It was good. Lots of trees fell in kids' yards and stuff, but yeah, Valentine's Day was unique for TAM. And everyone enjoyed breaks, lots of skiing and college visits. Every kid seemed to come back more tired than they were when they left. CTE is having a Trojan Women's playing from March 12th to March 16th, and SOAR is presenting a screening of I'm Not a Racist, Am I? On February 28th. Our Breakthrough Day is being postponed because kind of conflict of ideas coming from different organizations, so they're trying to kind of recreate that and hopefully pulling it off this year. But kind of Mr. Farr's philosophy and most of the student leaders are like, breakthrough day, like a race kind of assembly at TAM, is we have to do it right or not do it at all. So we're kind of struggling to make sure we can get it as good as possible, but we're really trying to have it student-led, so it's kind of hard to get there, but fingers crossed we'll pull it off. Our open house is next week on March 7th. I think that's next week, or it's coming soon. And then SOAR, as well as the TAM High, or our administration, is having a filmmaker, Dr. I don't know how to pronounce that, Shakti, come to TAM. She made some really cool film, so they're having kids come during March 13th during tutorial to try and talk to her and have a discussion about the topics that came up in the film, which is a cool opportunity.
Thank you, Lauren.
Okay, so I just have a couple things. So we're having our Avenue of the Giants this Friday, so that's where every other year famous alumni from Redwood come back and speak in different classes, and teachers get to choose people that they want to come speak. So I know that some of the physics classes and astronomy classes are having a rocket scientist come in, who's apparently been really successful, and he navigates how spaceships land on different planets. So classes and teachers are really excited about that. Our girls and boys basketball teams made it to state playoffs and are playing right now in the gym. And then we had our winter rally on Valentine's Day. And we had for the first time, we did a break the chain flash mob that was organized by a couple juniors, but a bunch of kids from different grades joined in. And it was really successful, and it's to show support for victims of sexual assault. And we had Peer Resource present, and it was a fun rally.
Go ahead.
Devonna, I'm sad that I can't come to the open house for San Andreas on Thursday. I've been called out of town. But I'm just giving you a heads up that I'm going to want some details on that, the values of the morality exercise. I'd be curious about that. So, thank you.
If it's what I think it is, we did that. I don't know, Corey, you could nod. Is it what we did last year or the year before? Yeah, it was quite something.
Yeah,
So,
I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah. Yeah, they have a really good open house. I look forward to it, and I'm sorry you can't go. But. So now we'll move on to the Superintendent Report.
Good evening, everybody. So Friday is March 1st, which I usually call the unofficial start of the next school year, because we begin our budget development as well as scheduling and staffing for next year, all within the next 2 weeks. So I hope that March also brings some sun with it. Although I'm appreciative of the rain, I think I'm ready for a little bit of sunshine. A few things of note. This week is Say Something Week, which is a campaign that was started by the Sandy Hook Promise Foundation to raise awareness around gun safety and provide students with the tools to speak up if they hear someone is planning to hurt themselves or others. A key component is for students to identify a trusted adult on campus with whom they can confide. Research conducted by the United States Secret Service indicates that 4 out of 5 school shootings, the perpetrator had told somebody of their plans ahead of time. So it's important that we all be aware and say something when we hear or see something. I just wanted to let people know that at a county level, the superintendents are discussing next steps, particularly around the issues of the Sandy Hook Promise and gun safety and dissemination of that information. TAM High Mock Trial won the county competition and will represent Marin County at the state competition on March 22nd and 23rd in Sacramento. So congratulations to them, and we wish them luck in that competition. March 12th, the TAM District Counseling and Wellness Program, in partnership with Kaiser, presents The Mask You Live In as part of the Teen Wellness Film Series. Research shows that compared to girls, boys in the United States are more likely to be diagnosed with a behavior disorder, prescribe stimulant medications, fail out of school, binge drink, commit a violent crime, and/or take their own lives. The Mask You Live In follows boys and young men as they struggle to stay true to themselves while negotiating America's narrow definition of masculinity. The show is at 6:30 on March 12th at the Rafael Film Center, and a share of the proceeds go to the Counseling and Wellness Program in the district. On March 13th, TAM High will host the nationally recognized filmmaker, director, and producer Dr. Shakti Buckler. Dr. Butler has produced many documentary films and consulted on Disney films such as Zootopia. Her latest film is called Healing Justice. It was released in January of 2018, and it grapples with the issues of justice in America. Dr. Butler has many accolades, and Tam High is honored to host her. To deepen the conversation around the race, equity, and social justice for all students, Dr. Butler will speak on March 13th during tutorial in Gus Gym, and that's at 9:45 in the morning. And 4 of our 5 schools have their open houses coming up. As we heard, San Andreas is this Thursday night at 6 p.m. Tam High is March 7th at 6 p.m. March 14th is Tamascal at 6 p.m. and March 21st is Redwood at 6:30.
Thank you, Tara. We'll now move on to agenda item 13 under trustee considerations. And I believe that's you to discuss the budget reduction recommendation and resolution 18-16. And I will open it up during the presentation. Fellow trustees are welcome to interrupt and ask a question to make it easier for everyone to stay on track, and same goes for the student trustees. We will then have any sort of discussion amongst ourselves before I open it up to public comment on this particular item. So, thank you, Tara.
Sure. Okay, good evening, everybody. So this is a follow-up presentation to the one I did 2 weeks ago, in which we did the preliminary discussion around the budget reductions. So the first couple of slides are repeat. So just to remind everybody of the overview of our process since 2015, and what process has brought us to here tonight. The timeline that we published earlier in August, and obviously we are here on February 26th with the final recommendation to the board and a request for approval of the resolution. So a reminder of some of the tensions that the district has been feeling financially. That part of those tensions are the increase in the STRS and PERS pension rates beginning in 2013 with the Public Employment Pension Reform Act. As you can see, these have quite a significant impact on district finances, and by 22-23, the cumulative impact will be $6.7 million annually. This is just a visual of that same information. The blue lines indicate where STRS and PERS were when the increase, the red line, is where when it started, and the blue line indicates the increase and the impact on our budget. These were the reductions that were made to date. Obviously, the blue was in 2016. The green, the list of items in green were things that were made in the spring of last year and were part of the adopted budget in June. And then the things in yellow were reductions that were made since the adopted budget. So the comparison, and where we were in June, we were projected to deficit spend just under $8 million. The total changes that have taken place since then, which include realization of $2.9 million of supplemental parcel tax revenue, bring the projected deficit down to $3.7 million for this year. This is our multi-year projection, and we're showing this to indicate that the $3 million is part of these projections. It's this orange line in the middle, so that the bottom row is inclusive of those cuts. This is a snapshot, a close-in snapshot. So the top line, the yellow, just below the yellow and the white, is where we were in June. Again, projected to deficit spend $7.8 million. That would have left us of a reserve of 8.6. And then in the 2 out years, continued to deficit spend. And had we not made changes, we would have been insolvent by the middle of 2021. In blue, you'll see the changes that we've made reflected there. We have decreased the deficit spending, but even with the recommended $3 million or $2.8 million worth of cuts on tonight's agenda, we are still projected to deficit spend in the 2 out years. So any additional savings that we realize will go to offsetting that ongoing structural deficit. Just a reminder of some key dates, particularly that on March 12th, Corbett Elson, our Chief Financial Officer, will present the second interim budget to the board. So the recommendation that I brought forward 2 weeks ago has not changed. This is the same recommendation that you see listed here. Just to clarify, the top line, the reduction in staffing, was a combination of two lines in the past. It's not an increase in overall. Again, that line. So some additional information that was requested. So wellness and counseling program and services, we have a robust program that is inclusive of lots of different moving parts. We have 17 full-time counselors who work in the district, and they are part and parcel of this whole student support program. We also have a series of wellness employees. So we have a director who's a 1.0 this year. She'll be 0.75 for us next year, 0.25 for the county. We have certificated wellness coordinators as well as classified outreach specialists. Some people have asked why they are considered separate from BACR. It is because the wellness FTE are actually staff of the district. The BACR counselors are part of BACR, and they are not in-district employees. And we currently have 7.4 FTE in BACR counselors. Some additional information at the bottom. While we have reduced the reduction to BACR, we still are going to realize some loss of services there. However, I've spoken to Wes Cedros. He is confident that we can put together a plan and backfill many of those counseling hours with interns from other services. We're also looking to diversify some of our services a little bit with the help of our wellness coordinators, who much of their job is to sort of manage and do some outreach to those other organizations and within the county, and to find some services that our kids might need. Multi-year projection again. So to revisit, what will happen if we don't make these reductions is that the deficit, structural deficit will continue and will increase in magnitude. With a continued structural deficit on our books, it is less likely that Marin County Office of Education would approve our budget in June. And while we have stemmed some of the loss now, if we weren't to make these additional $3 million or $2.8 million worth of reductions, we would still be insolvent in a few years. And as we've said before, when we go insolvent, we lose control over our decision-making processes at that point. So tonight, what I am asking for the board to approve is a resolution 1816. As you can see here, the resolution is in essence our promise to the county office that we will take all necessary steps to realize the reductions outlined in this recommendation. Again, the multi-year. So next steps after tonight would be that the second interim budget presentation will be made on March 12th. And then on June 11th, we will have our initial local control and accountability plan, or LCAP, and budget presentations. At that time, we will have another year out of projections. Those have to be finished and approved before July 1st of 2019. June 25th is the LCAP and budget adoption date.
Tara, can you make one clarification?
Sure.
We've heard from some members of the community, there's some confusion about the dollar value of the total reductions. And can you speak briefly and just provide a little bit more clarification that the additional $3 million was planned even, if the parcel tax passed? And
Sure,
just-
yeah.
Can you
I
just
don't-
put that
yeah.
in perspective
So,
a little bit?
with, I don't have those slides in this presentation, but in past presentations, what we spoke to was, well, I can show you. We were, sorry. You can see here that we were planned to deficit spend 8 million, 9, and 10 ostensibly. And with the parcel tax of 5, 2.9 or this year and 5 in the out years, we knew that we still had to make at least $3 million worth of reductions. That was part of the communication, was that we're going to have to still do some reductions, even with the parcel tax. Without that parcel tax, we would have to find an additional $5 million on top of what we've already reduced. So those multi-year projections that are seen here include the potential $2.8 million worth of reductions that are recommended tonight.
Thank you. I think that's important. I'd like to open it up to fellow trustees. Do you have any clarifications you'd like to ask for or comments to share with the board?
Just one quick thing. I've had a lot of questions from some people in the community about the numbers with the parcel tax plus this $3 million. They said, well, why is there still an effort to reduce expenses further? And if we think about the $3 million cuts plus $5 million parcel tax next year, that's 8 versus the deficit of $9 million that had been projected, and so clearly it still leaves that $1 million deficit there. And Tara talked about what would happen if we didn't do this. The other way of looking at it is, well, why would we do this? Having a continuing operating deficit is no way to run a railroad or a school district, and so want to have a balanced budget year after year, and so just continuing to look to have a balanced budget there for the future.
And I think it's also important, excuse me, which I think you've addressed at prior meetings, about when you've gone over the process that while no one likes to make cuts, and that's not an ideal situation, that the recommendations for the cuts are consistent with the LCAP focus, consistent with the surveys that came back from parents that were issued by the district or the fiscal advisory committee. And then the fiscal advisory committee had many different community representatives on it. And so that this really has been, excuse me, a community-driven process. And so I commend the community, because we actually faced a lot of questions about that when we were running for these seats, kind of coming into the middle of the process. And so, we're going in the right direction.
Also, I want to make note that, we're well aware that we serve a greater community beyond the immediate student population and the parents, and that as the results have come in with the surveys that this superintendent performed, as well as the previous board focus groups, the polling that was done last summer is consistent with where what the greater community valued in our school system, and protecting those things is consistent with what we heard from the parents. So that's very helpful too as we face these difficult decisions.
I would also like to commend not only Tara and Lars and Corbett for all the work that they have done, but I'd like to thank Kate Lane for her presence here and her guidance and support, encouraging us when it was very hard to swallow and get us through this. Thank you, Kate.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if I could just say one more thing, I again want to thank the Fiscal Advisory Committee for all of their work. I want to thank Kate Lane and Lars and Corbett for all of your work in this. I want to thank everyone who came out to our presentations and gave input and filled out the surveys. I've said it many times, and I'll say it many more. This is not a position that anybody wants to be in. I do not wish to make cuts. I wish the district was in a position where we didn't have to. I think it would be irresponsible for us not to do our due diligence now. I got a lot of questions when I was out there of like, why didn't you act sooner? And I think it's because it's hard. Because it's really hard to make these cuts. It's really hard to prioritize when everything matters. And that is why it's also important to do it now, so that we're not passing this on down the road and 5 years from now someone's standing here going, why didn't you do something sooner? And it's just not easy. And so I commend the people who were part of this and continue to provide voice and guidance along the way. So thank you.
Okay, before I ask for a motion, I'm going to open it up for public comment on this item, and let me see if I have any cards here. Even if I don't have your card, you're welcome to step forward. So this is item 13A, and at this point, I see two commenters on this item, and this will help us with recording your name in the meeting summary. But I just ask whoever would like to make a comment, please step up to the podium, and you'll have up to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Mimi Willard, Kentfield resident and Coalition of Sensible Taxpayers. When I was last here at your meeting in January, which the budget was approved, I was told don't really worry about the specifics of this budget because this isn't really the final budget. This is kind of a placeholder. But it seems like we're still moving forward with that same placeholder. We're just kind of filling out how we get there as far as the $3 million of unidentified budget cuts. And so, but correct me if I'm wrong about that. But from what I see here on the slide, we're still ending up with the same deficit projected for fiscal 1920 of 1.1 million and for fiscal 2021 of 2.2 million. And while I recognize that the cuts that you're making are deeply painful and difficult for everybody involved in the school community, I submit that it's just not responsible to continue to deficit spend, and that you need to be not only stopping deficit spending, but you need to be improving your reserves because you're in a good economy now, and real estate prices have been going up and so on, and this isn't going to go on forever. I don't think this budget is where you ought to be. Thank you. Oh, and then, seeing as I've got a minute 30 left, I'm just going to enter a little protest / whine about the open public comment going to the end of the meeting. I don't know if that's just a one-time thing or a new approach this year that I didn't notice, but I think it's profoundly anti-public participation because no one's going to stay around for hours to speak up about something. And I had something that I thought was fairly important to talk about tonight, and I can tell you I'm not going to do it. Thank you.
Thank you for that feedback. Should we wait till the end if you have any clarification you want to provide? Okay.
Hi, I'm Laura Ethel. I live in Larkspur. Most of you, other than the student trustees, know me by now. Because I've been here quite a few times over the last year. I no longer have any kids in the district, but I'm still here and I'm still attending meetings. And I've noticed that every time I make a recommendation to this board, you listen very politely and you don't do what I suggest. And then a little while later, somebody with real clout tells you you have to do it. Last time I was here, I complained about these reserves, and you said, we're not changing the budget tonight, we're just certifying it so we can send it on to the Marin County Board of Education. And what did they do? They told you it wasn't good enough. Well, the other thing I complained about at the last, are you seeing a pattern here, right? The other thing I complained about at the last meeting is I said you really need to address the negotiations with your unions, and you have to make sure that your negotiator knows not to do business as usual. And what do I see? Business as usual. Plus, an even worse thing, which is an agreement, a tentative agreement at least, to share future increases with the unions. This is not okay. But I'm going to make it simple tonight. I'm going to have one simple recommendation. And maybe you'll take this one seriously. Who knows? Raises to teachers and other employees result in tremendous increases in your pension obligations. Bonuses do not. Now, I understand that it's very difficult for some people to afford to live in Marin County. A bonus helps pay the mortgage or the rent, and it doesn't raise any of your pension obligations. So I hope you'll take that seriously under consideration. Thank you.
I see one more. Did you, sir, wanted to make a comment? If you could come to the podium and give us your name. I think I might have your card here, actually.
I think it's this one right here.
Okay.
So, my name is Sera Nino, and I'm a student from TAM. First, I'd just like to thank you all for letting me speak here. I think it's a great opportunity to have communication with the community. So, I've suffered from depression and depersonalization as a result of loneliness and isolation. I also had an alcohol addiction throughout my freshman year. But luckily, I'm not in that state anymore. As a result, I've been able to speak at this podium without any sense of despair and hopelessness. This has come because of BACR counselors that helped me through these hard times. But now it's going to be cut. In fact, 22% of it. So I don't think I'm actually an accurate representation of victims that have gone to my school and have to go through these difficult times. In fact, about 1/5 of students have actually performed self-harm in their life, and 7% of students have actually committed suicide. This was from a survey, the California Healthy Kids survey that was conducted last year. I believe that these BACR cuts will do more than just pulverize the only therapeutical service that students are offered at my school. In fact, it sends a message to the A students that's suffering from chronic anxiety and the drug addict that's addicted to cocaine, as well as the immigrant who's suffering from depression and isolation. I think that those who need help the most shouldn't have to pay for the price of a mismanagement of finances that's led to this crisis. The former superintendent left us while taking $150,000 without an explanation. But up to 75% of wellness is going to be shifted from this district for just less than 1/3 of the money that he took. So I ask you now, why did he leave? Why did he have to leave us at such a desperate moment? Thank you.
Thank you. Before we have any discussion, I want to give the superintendent an opportunity to provide any clarification, because there were a few, or maybe wait. I did hear a few things that could require a little bit, maybe we can just do it. I think the one thing that I want to confirm with you, Tara, is that at the last, we approved the budget for 1920 in June. And so that's our budget. And at the last meeting, for 1819. Sorry,
Yes.
I'm already getting ahead of myself.
I was like,
for
wait a minute, what?
Yeah, for 1819.
Right.
That we're on a schedule to provide interim.
Yes, yeah, sorry, yeah, we the interim budgets.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was, we weren't approving the budget, we were approving that we had positive certification.
Correct.
And that's all that we were approving. We weren't discussing budget line items.
No,
And
yeah.
we always had intended to do this
Mm-hmm.
resolution. And so the work that you've been doing was to identify the actual nuts and bolts of that 3 million line item.
Yeah, that's correct. The interim reports are required to show that we're on target, that there's been no big surprises, or that we're making the necessary changes to correct the ship. But those are updates to the existing budget in out years, but the budget is adopted in June.
And the other point I want to clarify, I want to confirm with you, because I want to make sure we're very clear about this, is that while we are looking at the numbers tonight, we haven't approved yet your, that's what we're discussing now, is approving the resolution. But as you said, as more cost-saving items are developed, that will go into looking at the reducing
Yeah.
the deficit spending.
Yes.
in hopes to balance the budget as soon as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I think to the point that was made, we need to stop the structural deficit, because a structural deficit eventually runs to zero. Whether it's 2 years, 4 years, and it's a trajectory that will get us in trouble with the county when they look at that. That is something that we have to prove we are taking concrete steps to resolve, that we can't just keep deficit spending. So that is part of it, and so we need to stop that. So any additional savings we realize beyond this will go to offsetting the continued structural deficit, so that we don't find ourselves in a position year after year where we're trying to realize cuts. We're going to do it all, try to finalize it all this year so that we can move forward with a balanced budget.
And if the board approves in the next half hour or so your resolution, will that $3 million, actually it's closer to 2.86, yeah, that will then be shown, reflected in the next interim? It won't be a necessary
Correct.
line item, it'll be rolled in.
That's correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that was
So it'll
clear.
be less easy to see, but it'll be baked into the actual
Okay.
pieces, yeah.
Okay. Those were things that I heard that I particularly wanted to make sure that we were cleared. I'm going to let you go ahead. I see you have one too.
Only because this has come up a couple of times. It's true that we can't discuss employment decisions with the public, regardless of how many times the public asks. We are prohibited by law from doing that. And also, I just want to not take up the issue, but it's been characterized as mismanagement of funds. And so while funds may not have been spent the way the community would like, or various members of the community, there's no evidence of mismanagement of the funds. There is a reserve. Thankfully, that reserve was a very healthy reserve, but in a public education setting, that reserve is looked at for funding programs, for keeping up with cost of living, for continuing to attract and retain highly qualified teachers to an extraordinarily expensive place to live. And so that reserve does not sit untouched in school districts, because the community will then come back and say, why aren't you spending that money, that revenue, on the program right now? And so that's a tension that we always have, right? To provide a reserve, to keep a reserve, and make sure that we're supporting the program that the community wants the schools to provide, and that the community has become accustomed to having. And so we take that very seriously. We take our role very seriously on trying to strike that balance. And when we discussed how these recommended cuts were consistent with LCAP, consistent with surveys, consistent with the Fiscal Advisory Committee's tremendous work, and taking it out to the community and getting feedback, and really trying to honor as much as we could within the TAM education, I think we've done that. And I think this board is committed to continue to reduce deficit spending, as you just emphasized. And I just want to make sure that the community understands that we're serious about this. As far as the comment, we take every comment very seriously, even if we don't act on them, because that's then the board's role, right? And working with the admin team to decide what steps going forward, right? And as far as the distinction between bonus and raise on the salary schedule, we're aware of the difference, and as are the teachers and the CSEA, right? And so that's always a balance too, is trying to structure things that attract and retain, as well as maintain fiscal solvency. So thank you for bringing that up, and but we do understand that, and we are cognizant of that.
Student trustees, do you have any comments or anything you'd like to direct to each other or the board about anything that on this item? Yes. Cara.
I will say, I've been a student in the BACR program, and it does, it's a bummer to have those programs cut, but I'm happy to at least hear that you guys are acknowledging that there's ways to hopefully get those therapists back, and I hope in the long term, once we have more money, that'll be one of the first things to come back. And I trust you guys in making your best judgment, but I do appreciate that, like I'm a student in journalism. I'm glad that's not being cut, or women's history. Like it does feel like I'm happy that it's not touching our education, although it hurts to have, or some of the amazing staff that we have, to know that they have to retire earlier, are losing their jobs. Like in the end, we're here for an education, and I'm glad that that's being preserved. So thank you. I don't know. Thanks, Kara.
I too would like to say that I'm glad that we're cutting just things that we can now, instead of going into more of a deficit and cutting just bigger things that we would miss more, like saving team now and saving pathways and all the programs that we're being able not to cut, even though we have to save money somehow. I'm just incredibly thankful that we're able to find the money and just continue down the path to keep education strong.
Thank you for that. Maddie?
I've been able to be a part of this board for the last 2 years, and I've seen many iterations of what these budget cuts could look like. And some of them were a lot harder than what this is going to be. And it's true, these budget cuts are not good, because no budget cut is ever good, because having to cut any part of our district, because everything is great about our district, and having to let go of any of that is hard. But I do think that these recommended cuts are the best recommendation I've seen of the many, many iterations that we've gone through.
Just to reiterate what we've all kind of said, I really just want to thank you guys for taking the time to go to each school and have a community meeting and let students ask these questions that maybe they didn't even know we were having budget problems, and they just wanted clarification. And I just really appreciate your patience with that, and the fact that you listened so well to the voices of students. And I think that this budget proposal really does reflect what students wanted, especially with BACR and other areas like that. I think this is a really good proposal for students, and I think that it's a good example of listening to student voice and how that can be really beneficial.
I also want to, thank you very much for that. It's helpful to always get your feedback. But I think, I'm sure that all board members, we really appreciate a student having the courage to come forward and share his personal struggles and the value that he's gained from BACR. And I think that's why, at the last board meeting, we asked for more information about the full services that the wellness program covers, and ways that the superintendent and Mr. West Cedros were tackling it to mitigate, the reductions in BACR. And I do just want to say, I know I share that with the other board members, that this is something that it's heartbreaking what so many of our youth experience, and it isn't something that we take lightly. And so we will continue to monitor the situation. And thank you for speaking up. Really admire that. Thank you. So I think with that, we're ready for a motion to pass Resolution 18-16.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Thank you. This is a roll call vote. Mary?
Preferential vote, do you think?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much, Maddie. Thank you. I was so preoccupied. This is great. Thank you. So now, before we have our official, this is official too, though, but before we have the vote by the trustees, we'll ask for preferential vote by the student trustees. So this will also be a roll call vote. So we could start at this end with Lauren, if you could either say aye or nay.
Aye.
Aye.
Kara? Devana?
Aye.
Great. Charlotte?
Aye.
Maddie?
Aye.
Very good. Thank you. So now, Mary, we're ready for the trustees.
Okay, Ms. Owens?
Aye.
Ms. Ronich?
Aye.
Mr. Oppenheim?
Aye.
Mr. Saavedra?
Aye.
Ms. Harrington?
Aye.
Ms.
Thank you very much. That passed.
Thank you.
So now we'll go on to the next item, and that is going to be presented by Lars Christensen and Corbett Elson to take action on the public disclosure in accordance with AB 1200 and associated salary schedule between the TUHSD and Tamalpais Federation of Teachers.
Good evening, all, and thank you. Many of our classified staff, certificated staff, administration, we get up early in the morning and drive past a lot of other school districts to come to this one and work. And I can tell you the reason that I do it, and many others do it, is because of the relationship that we have with our Teachers Association under the direction of Corey DeMars and Ann Jaime. And I'm honored to stand before the board this evening and present a tentative agreement with our Teachers Association that I think really, this tentative agreement manifests itself in the relationship that we have. You can't access any media outlet these days without seeing that there is great teacher and management unrest in many other school districts in the state of California and beyond. You don't have to climb very far up the flanks of Mount Tam to even see them from here. So we're grateful for the relationship and grateful for the work that we do together. And that relationship transfers directly into the classroom, into how teachers interact with students and deliver instruction every day. So, with respect, I ask this evening that you approve the tentative agreement between the Tamalpais Federation of Teachers and the governing board, the Tamalpais Union High School District. I'm happy to review it point by point, President Lundgren, at your request.
I think it would be helpful for you to review it at a high level based on some of the confusion by the community members. We've all received feedback, so I think it would be very helpful to describe things that are capped versus averages and so on and so forth. Thank you.
Happy to do that. It's a multifaceted agreement. First, want to stress it's a 2-year agreement. There's great value in settlement, particularly in a multi-year fashion. With regard to the agreement itself, this year we have agreed to a 1.5% compensation increase that's on schedule and ongoing, retroactive back to July 1st of 2018. So that's this school year. For the second year, 2019-20 school year, we have guaranteed a 2.5% increase in compensation on schedule, ongoing, as a result of the savings that we will accrue due to a class size memorandum of understanding. Essentially what that means is that we are raising class sizes to a small degree that equates to less teachers, that equates to a savings in overall district expenditure. So with regard to class size, I know that there's been a lot of concern. What we've done is essentially raise the class size ratios by department by 10. So we look at going from an average class size of 30 to an average class size of 32. For the first time, to my knowledge, in the history of the Tam High District, we've also created a class size cap, a maximum. That's at 34. At the same time, though, we have an overall student contact per one teacher of 160. So, meaning that a single teacher can't have more than 160 students on their caseload in a given day, with the exception of performing arts and physical education. Those classes are naturally larger, as everybody knows. So, with that hard cap of 34 times 5, which is typically what a teacher teaches, that's 170. So you will never have 5 classes of 34. If you have a class of 34, you're going to likely have a couple of other classes in the mid to high 20s. So, again, those are hard caps to essentially allow us to keep our promise that we made to the public during the parcel tax campaign, is that we would not raise class sizes beyond reasonable levels. I have comparison data that I can share at your request of other like districts in Northern California, and our class sizes compare very favorably to them. They're either smaller or right at the same levels. And there are some very prestigious districts that have no class size ratios, no class size cap, like Los Gatos, Saratoga as an example, where a good friend of mine has served as principal for a long time. So we feel, we understand that class size is really a flashpoint for the community, for our school community, and the community at large as well. But we feel we have kept our promise with regard to our parcel tax initiative. And again, we will generate savings as a result of slightly raising class sizes. That MOU sunsets in 3 years too, by the way, and then we go back to existing contractual levels.
Can you expand slightly? I think when people hear average class size of 30, that where their mind travels to is that most classes will be 30. And I think we need to clarify what most classes are now, and that we have classes over 30 now, and how this really, to give a little bit of perspective.
Yeah, I mean, we have when you look district-wide, our class sizes are certainly less than that. We do have some classes over 30 now, but this slight increase in department ratio, again, essentially equates to 2 students per class. So the difference will be very, very slight. We don't want to minimize that. I mean, there are more kids in front of every teacher, and again, I don't want to minimize the impact on student and or teacher. But at the same time, we feel it's a very, very reasonable increase. Again, it's a temporary increase in that the MOU sunsets in 3 years, and it's in keeping with other comparable districts around the Bay Area and beyond. That's year 2. That's how we generate that 2.5% increase in year 2. We also are offering on the word bonus was used earlier this evening, so I would call it off schedule. We're also offering an off-schedule increase for a 3-year period. It's not guaranteed, but should the secured actual property tax revenue above the current budgeted assumption come in at a different rate, we purport to share that with TFT in a 50-50 split. So in other words, if we budget for X, but it comes in Y, if there's an increase, we would share that increase over a 3-year period as an off-schedule, one-time compensation increase. I mentioned the class size ratios. Another, again, I don't think monumental is too small a word, quite frankly, is that we now have agreed to a health cap for all incoming employees beginning July 1 of 2019. So what that means is, right now, we have a cap on health care, but it's floating. It's the Kaiser rate. As the Kaiser rate increases, we cover any and all benefits, unlimited dependents. Now we've established a hard cap at $20,000 for all new employees. That won't result in any immediate savings, but over the long term it will, and it will allow, again, health care, which is an expensive proposition for any and all institutions, become part and parcel of any compensation increases. That takes place next year for all new employees grandfathered into the existing unit. We've slightly increased the district hourly rate for teachers working on other projects above and beyond their classroom work from $46.35 at its current level to $50 per hour next year. Many times we run out of substitute teachers in our school district, as does every other district in Marin and beyond. So we have to ask our teachers during their conference period to do some subbing. We've agreed that we'll pay them at their per diem rate as opposed to an hourly rate. Meaning if you're a veteran teacher, you make more than the younger teacher, we will compensate you at the current level that you're working. Closed contract for 2 years with regard to salary and benefits. By mutual agreement, we can discuss other topics that are non-monetary in nature. In our contract, we offer a retirement incentive. Over the years, we've capped that at 10 persons. And remember, retirements equate to savings. We've capped it at 10. I'm not sure why it had that cap on it, quite frankly. We've never reached it, by the way, according to my assistant who's been here 17 years. We've taken the cap off now. So if 11 people want to retire, they'd be eligible for the retirement incentive if they meet the criteria in the contract. And then lastly, there is a clause in the teacher contract, quite frankly, one I'd never seen before in any other contract, about there being a library media teacher in the library at all times. The association agrees to waive that clause of the contract. So that is the tentative agreement, or TA, with TFT. Again, we believe there's great value in settlement. We think this is fair to both parties, and I respectfully request that you approve this TA. Before you do that, or before you consider it, I should say, Corbett Elson, our CFO, is here to talk about AB 1200, which essentially is a requirement that all districts have when you settle with a bargaining unit, that you report out your settlement to the County Office of Education, who is our fiscal overseer, and Corbett can walk through the mechanics of AB 1200 for you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, go ahead.
Should we walk through AB 1200, which is really the reporting requirement, or should we talk about substantive comments regarding the proposed
right? I was just
teacher
looking at-
contract,
Yeah, I
right?
was just looking at the agenda. Were you going to go into more detail, or what were you planning? Were you going to talk more about the,
I was simply going to walk
You know,
through a
clarify-
couple of key items in the AB 1200 document,
that
clarify one piece.
that caused some of the confusion in the community, and then we'll be able to, okay, yeah, if
Either
you
way.
stick with that, I think that'd be great.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mary, if you would, if you pull up the AB 1200 PDF, that'd be helpful. So much like I just mentioned, I'm just going to emphasize a few key components of the document. This is a complex agreement that has a lot of facets to it, as Lars emphasized. I just want to touch on a couple key pieces. Mary, if you scroll down to the bottom of that first page, right here or there, go back up, please. Thank you. Right there. The narrative of the agreement, that box that has all the components that Lars just referenced and talked through. Specifically, I'm going to talk through the second and third asterisk. I know that's small font, so you can see some more detail of how that financially plays out in terms of dollars. The second bullet point, as Lars mentioned, for next school year, we're offering an honest schedule increase to our certificate staff of the greater of either 2.5% or the savings as a result of the class as MOU. For the sake of this document, we obviously can't predict where that's going to play out given staffing, enrollment comes in, who are the students that show up throughout the summer or do not enroll. That will be finally calculated at the start of the school year. The third bullet point is much like just Lars said. It's a one-time or off-schedule proportional share of if any, and I want to emphasize the word if any property tax revenue comes in beyond what was budgeted, that delta above what was budgeted would be shared 50-50, 50% going to the certificate unit and the 50% going to the district. As Dr. Topia said, that would help offset our operating deficits. So I just want to highlight those 2 points. Mary, if you scroll down to page 2, please, towards the top. This is the salaries. You'll see 3 columns there. Current year, which is 2018-19. Year 2, which is next year, and year 3. If you look down to row 3, you'll see the 1.5% salary raise for this year, as Lars mentioned. And the column immediately to the next of it is the 2.5% raise. I just want to clarify that's the floor that will be finalized once we see where the staffing ratios come back officially in the fall. And the third year, you'll solely see the 0.13 potential property tax share. That is purely speculative based on some past property tax sharing rates. That will be determined each September when we do an audited actual to see where the actual property tax revenues came in, not projections. Mary, if you would go to the top of page 3, I want to clarify a understandable source of confusion I've had a few on the document from some community members that reached out to me today. I had a great conversation with an engaged community member. One thing I want to clarify on row 10, you'll see in those same 3 columns that the average total compensation is $139,000 this current year, but it shares that compensation would increase to $170,000. I want to clarify that $40,000 increase is not accurate. What I want to clarify is that while that would be related to a 2.5% increase, whatever that would turn out to be, the greater of the raise or the sharing. The calculation of that is, as Lars mentioned, there will be some reduction of staffing as a result of our retirement incentive. So not to get too mathematical, I'm a former math teacher, but the denominator of that number is getting smaller while there is some compensation increase. The numerator, I included compensation increase, but I did not take out the salaries related to the savings of the staff the staff members who would be leaving us, who are via retirement or choosing to resign. So that's where that figure is artificially inflated. So I want to clarify that publicly, that is not an accurate piece, that it will be closer to the 2.5% increase. That being said, even with that figure, all the other figures in this document are not dependent upon that. All of them are accurate and valid per the pieces of the agreement.
So can I just translate for a non-math teacher?
Please.
Or attempt to translate for a non-math teacher? So you're saying the post-settlement number is artificially high because it includes the current high salaries of people that are leaving?
That are currently,
Yeah,
correct.
right.
Yes.
Yes.
It's not even just people with high salaries leaving it. The aggregate pool of expenses now basically unchanged plus growth for next year.
Right.
Divided by the lower
FTE count.
Okay.
It still includes all the employees, their compensation.
So you haven't deducted the, yeah.
Yeah.
Fabulous.
The intent was just to try to show the compensation increase, look back upon it full transparently. I would do this differently next time around because of that understandable source of misunderstanding. Mary, if you would move on to page 5, please. Thank you. You'll see in the narrow blue line, current year, fiscal year 2018-19, that is this year. In column 2, you'll see 2 figures that's related to certificated salaries and employee benefits. That is the 1.5% raise, if approved, adds up to a total of $633,000. So again, that's the 1.5% raise that Lars referred to. Mary, if you'd scroll down to the next page, 2019-20, this is where it gets a little bit more complicated. You'll see that for 2019-20, which is what this page shows, in column 2, the $908,000 and the benefits related to that is the 2.5% raise we alluded to, and some potential, if property tax comes in above budget, the sharing as a result of that. So that is what you see in column 2. In column 3, that is the savings, the $1.875 million in parentheses. Looking at section B, line 1, in column 3. That is the savings from, as we know, we've had 25 members of our certificated unit who decided to take up our retirement incentive. We've also had some teachers who have resigned, and we're also potentially going to be considering certificated reductions. Those numbers are incorporated in lines B1 and B3. And also in B10. Those 3 figures are savings as a result of that. And lastly, I want to point out line B7, the other outgo, the $647,000. That is the PARS payment we make as a result of using the retirement group. That will be seen for 5 years per the agreement when we approve that resolution.
I have a question. It was your previous comment about the savings from the retirees.
Mm-hmm.
When will you be calculating the actual savings based on how many of those we replace at a lower level of teacher?
That will be determined more probably at budget adoption, because we're just starting the staffing level meetings with principals. They've been doing simple tallies of how many students we have, at what grade level, what courses are signing up with, and we won't know exactly which teachers we need to hire for which departments until we go through that process. So that won't show up at the second interim in March 12th. That will show up at budget adoption in June. Thank you. And then, Mary, if you go down to page 7, that is the final third year. That's the 2020-21 year. That shows in column 2, in B1 and B3, $46,000 and $10,000. That's the potential sharing of any property tax values or revenues that come in above budget. And then column 3 shows the savings that we have for those ongoing reductions that we've talked about. The reason why those figures in column 3 are smaller in B1 and B3 is because that is net. That includes the raises involved from the previous year. So we have a savings of staff members who are no longer with us, but we're also paying our remaining employees the raises of 1.5% and 2.5%, which is ongoing. The last thing I just want to highlight is simply that if you slightly scroll down a little bit further on that same page, Mary, is on the bottom right that meets the percentage of state required reserves, the 15%. If you scroll through the previous pages, you'll show that these reserve levels, as a result of the fiscal advisor reduction approved tonight, and as a result of this agreement, the reserve levels are beginning to stabilize. And as Dr. Topi mentioned, the savings that would come to the district as a result of this agreement would be potentially offset our ongoing operating deficits if the board approves that. That would be reflected potentially March 12th at the second interim, pending your support and guidance, and that would show the most current comprehensive picture of our district's finances, given all the budget reductions we've done last spring, this fall, the extra parcel tax revenue, the fiscal advisory budget reduction piece, and lastly, I see this as the last significant major piece to getting us back to a place of fiscal sustainability, of balanced budgets, of appropriate reserve levels moving into the future. So with that, I'll step aside and see if there's any questions. Thank you.
The only thing I might say is that we prefer to reference the teachers who are leaving the district as separating from the district instead of no longer with us. That has a different kind of connotation. Very different connotation. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Lars, for that. Appreciate that. Let's just open it up.
So I just want to clarify. Because we have had some questions in the community, and I think we welcome the questions in the community regarding how we could be giving a raise at the same time that we are making cuts. And as far as I understand it, by giving the raise, it helps us meet the attract and retain highly qualified teachers, and also then allows us to preserve the richness of the program where we have qualified teachers teaching these courses. Is that correct?
It is, and it does. I also had the privilege of serving on the Fiscal Advisory Committee, and what came out loud and clear is the maintaining of robust course offerings and maintaining, robust graduation requirements and keeping the TAM district, essentially. To do those things, to not have to cut elective program and to maintain therapeutic counseling services and so forth to the degree that we have, that we have to generate savings in other forms. And, quite frankly, the teachers bear the burden of a lot of those savings. When you have a class size MOU and you add a few kids to the class, again, we're not going to stack them up like cordwood in those rooms, but we are adding a few kids to each teacher's caseload over the course of a given year. And I think it's only appropriate that we share that savings. We reward them for carrying that bit of extra burden. So the raises that you see are generated by the savings that we create through these other maneuvers in this multifaceted agreement. So it really, it serves the district well and serves in terms of, getting fiscal solvency, reverting a structural deficit. And we also need to compensate our teachers fairly. They work hard every day, and they're the reason for the excellence that we deliver each and every year.
And then I think you touched on this, but the luxury of having a 2-year agreement gives us some breathing room to further assess our program, revenue, expenses, without having to go right back to the bargaining table while actions are going on in many districts.
On so many fronts. It allows Corbett and his team to plan with fiscal certainty as they build budgets going forward. It allows Dr. Topier, Dr. Stifler, myself in a different kind of operation to plan for staffing allocations and so forth. It creates stability and permanence. 2 years isn't a long time, but it's better than 1 year. And it gives us, again, a chance to sort of reset and plan, in an effective manner going forward.
And I guess just to add, since I had gotten a lot of questions on this, I think first commend you really on this in terms of a creative way of putting it together that takes care of what the district needs really in terms of maintaining and retaining the talented teachers, but also helping to balance the budget. And so I think if we just look at some of the issues that I've been asked about, first, I think there's a need to do something. Again, if we look to next year's budget, $1 million deficit was there previously. This will help to take care of that. So if we think about balancing the budget, it's then a question of choices. Could easily do that by just saying, here, we'll go to 6-period day rather than 7-period day. Instead of doing this, we say, what were the priorities of the community? From the survey with fiscal advisory, it was maintain all the classes. So does that mean that, so we keep the classes, some will end up being slightly larger? I think Lars mentioned the districts out there and what other districts are doing. And look, we can find some other districts that have much higher ratios in terms of student to teachers, but they might not be performing so well. So if we look at those districts that are performing well, Mountain View, Los Altos, Fremont Union, which is the Cupertino area, and Homestead, Lynbrook high schools, where they're doing very well if we look at National Merit semifinalists, other standardized tests. And right now, Mountain View, Los Altos, their number is 161 to 1. And so we'd be 160 to 1. Fremont Union's at 162.5 to 1. So right, very similar to that. Acalanes is slightly better, but we end up really right in the middle of that. And then, I guess, if we look at this in the same way that if we think about the class sizes getting a bit larger, staffing goes along with the budget. And if we were to talk about and say, what should we budget in this based on this class sizes, in the same way that not every airplane that flies has every seat that's filled, not every class will be at the maximum size.
Right.
And so there's going to be some inefficiency built in there, and so class sizes won't be at that maximum. And we also have talented principals here who will be staffing, thinking which are the classes that really need to have greater student support, which classes can have slightly larger class sizes. So if you think about a class like, for instance, Algebra 1, where understanding those concepts are very important, you might want to do something slightly smaller than Calc BC, where students have mastered those concepts and can handle more on their own.
Really appreciate the accolades. I have the honor of standing at the podium and presenting this, but it's very much a team effort, and I don't mean that in any kind of trite way. It begins with the governing board having trust in Dr. Topia and her team. It begins with the union president and the vice president helping us construct a creative TA that works for both sides. It is very much a team effort. I get to stand up here and present it as if it's my own. I have a little piece of this too, but it's very, very much a team effort. Starts with the superintendent, the union president, and the board trusting us to do our work.
No, just to clarify, this is the teacher contract that they're working on?
It is.
And then, is this new that it's every other year, or has that been a previous thing?
There have been multi-year contracts in years past, not in recent past though. And it really, I think it speaks well again to the relationship that we have, that there's enough trust where we can go 2 years out and work together and looking at all of these numbers, which, are complicated. And it takes all of us a long time to really digest it and make sure we understand what we're seeing on these various spreadsheets. But again, a 2-year contract creates increased stability. For planning purposes, particularly for Mr. Elson, it's very, very helpful. And so I hope that when this 2-year period ends, that we can have another multi-year agreement. Single-year agreements aren't bad per se, but multi-year agreements tend to serve both sides, to a greater degree.
And then with the raise in class size, is that for every department or only the larger ones?
It's for every department, but it'll look different. For instance, already, as you know, PE classes are larger than math classes. Yeah. And so that'll continue that way proportionally so, with a few extra kids in each class.
But it's, each department's getting 2, or theoretically, let's say 2, but it could be your change. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to ask about the class sizes in smaller schools, such as San Andreas and Tamalpais, how that affect us.
That is a great question. I'm humbled by all of your questions over the course of not tonight, but every night, every board meeting. This MOU refers to our 3 comprehensive high schools. Because as you know, the way they're structured, there are many, many classes and many departments and so forth. Not that departments don't exist at San Andreas and Tamalpais, but those are schools where we control enrollment. We determine how many kids are in those classes and so forth. Whereas at a Redwood High where we're standing now, if more kids move into the attendance area, the school grows, as we've seen. So with Tamalpais and San Andreas, we control enrollment, therefore we can control class size in a different way. So we have an earlier MOU specific to Tamalpais that increases the independent study caseload to a slight degree that we've talked about. I can't remember if you were here or not for that meeting, but this primarily affects the 3 comprehensive high schools.
I just want to remind people that so many people have worked so very hard. The students have, the parents have, and the staff has. They've been working on this, focused, and it's not easy and it's not pleasant. People have worked to come up with creative, effective solutions, and it's been a long, hard, trusting experience, and I thank you, because we're getting closer and we're almost there. Thank you.
Thank you.
If there are no other comments from board members or student trustees, I will open it now for public comment.
Hi, Laura Ethel again. I'd just like to point out that by increasing the maximum size of classes, you are in effect favoring longer-term teachers over new teachers. Now, this is a process that's going on in a lot of public agencies, not just in schools. And a lot of the reason for that is what is called the California rule having to do with pensions. And everybody is taking it out on the new employees because they can't change what they've already given to the older employees. And that's what you're doing here. And I don't know if that's always the right answer. And in particular for this district, I think that's a serious consideration. Obviously, you want to keep really good teachers. When I first got involved in talking to this board, you may remember my husband and I wrote a Marin Voice piece where we talked about what we really liked about Redwood, where my stepchildren graduated. And the quality of the teaching was the thing we were really very happy about. These two kids are now in very good graduate programs at Ivy League schools and doing very well, and we're happy with what they got here. And it had nothing to do with the buildings or a lot of these other things. It was the quality of the teaching. But you do need to keep in mind that balance between retaining these really good teachers and recruiting adequate new teachers. And I don't know if this has really, by favoring the older teachers, I'm not sure you're doing the district as much good as you would hope. Thank you.
Just to clarify, there is the early retirement program, and so there's a mix of both taking place.
Right, thank you. Mimi.
Thank you. 2 or 3 things. One, I don't know how to read the 50-50 share on the parcel tax increase. Like, you have all your parcel tax. Property tax.
Yeah.
Does that include parcel tax?
No.
No. Okay, then I won't have to go there. All right. Number 2, I'm looking forward to seeing the next iteration of the budget because what I see you saying about the new employment agreement is that we would get to a 15% reserve level in a couple of years, and if I'm reading that properly, that would be a good thing. That would be what I've been looking for. So I would love to see that substantiated in the forecasts and in the real numbers. And then finally, I will just point out that to whatever extent you are achieving some of these increases in the reserves, just want to give you the heads up that you're going to need to be using a little chunk of that for the Marin Municipal Water District. Which, according to figures that I got today from Corbett, is going to cost you $160,000 a year for a new fee. So something to be aware of and something you might want to weigh in on with the district for protecting your resources because that's more than 1 teacher per year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other public comments?
My name is Peter Howald. I'm a parent here in the district. I really appreciate the board and what you guys do. My son really looks forward to coming to Redwood, and especially with the new principal, he's really excited about it, so thank you. When I voted for Prop J, like a lot of people in the room, I was it was a hard vote. I mean, we pay, like a lot of people in this room, an awful lot in taxes. And to see that class sizes are going to be increased next year is disheartening. And I would just like to see some communication back to the community on exactly what we voted on and what would have happened had we not passed Prop J. I think there has to be some clarity on that because I'm kind of confused on hearing class size increase when we took this burden on as a community. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Can I ask?
Yes. Yeah. Go ahead, 'cause I don't think we have any more.
So, and we appreciate that, but I think a simple answer of what it would look like if we did not pass Measure J is, as Dan has alluded to, we would have gone to 6 periods. And we talked about that during the election, during the debates, about what would happen if parcel tax didn't pass. So thankfully, the community has supported the education in the community and has allowed us to reach this balance of maintaining small class sizes. So these are relatively still small class sizes. The parcel tax did not say maintain current class sizes, right? It's working towards still maintaining smaller class sizes while also preserving the richness of the program. So,
another issue I'd love to talk about in meetings to come, and I'll defer to the superintendent, is that we've at times talked about how do we provide more information to the parent community as well as the community beyond. And I've heard from community members also comment that same way that you'll sometimes see signs saying, this is your tax dollars at work. We ought to look at a way that we can give back to the community, not just the thank you, but let them know what we've been able to maintain in our services and work here at the district because of the parcel tax, but give a broader update. And I look forward to having that discussion once we can come up for air from reaching these immediate deadlines.
is there a citizens committee put together to review the parcel tax revenue? An
Yes.
oversight committee?
Yeah, it has not been formed yet.
Right, but that's one of the things,
that
is
is
the
part of
oversight
it, yeah.
committee looks at the expenditures and makes sure it tracks with the parcel tax language, and that would be a natural
Body to-
point
right.
and body to then incorporate that report out to the community to let them know how the parcel tax revenue is being spent.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? Clarification, questions by board members or student trustees before I ask for a motion? And I'm looking for the item here, sorry.
With that, I would respectfully request that the
Thank
board
you.
approve
'Cause I can't find it.
the tentative agreement between the Tamalpais Union High School District and the Tamalpais Federation of Teachers in conjunction with the AB 1200 reporting document.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
I second it.
Okay. I don't know why I still can't see it. Is this a roll call vote? No. Okay, can I just ask all those in favor, please do a wait. Should we do another preferential vote with the student trustees on this as well? You're shaking your head, nodding? Well, you were pretty active in this discussion as well. Let's take a preferential vote. So for the student trustees, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, good. That passed with the student trustees. Now for my fellow trustees, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. That passed. Thank you, Lars, and thank you, everyone, for providing such a clear presentation and making some clarifications that were really helpful for all of us. So the next item is discuss Resolution 18-17, which is determine criteria for order of seniority for employees with the same date of first paid service. Now I see where we are. Okay.
Once again, good evening. What we're looking at with Resolution 18-17 is it's essentially a tie-breaking resolution. Part and parcel to all of these budget reductions, retirement incentives, and so on and so forth, approval of tentative agreements, we also need to very likely reduce certificated staff. That's not a pleasant topic. We will be bringing another resolution to you on March 12th. However, this resolution this evening, it is a tie-breaking resolution for those persons with the same hire date. As an example, if Mr. Saavedra and I are both teachers and we both began this year, if I'm hired in May and he's hired in June, it doesn't matter. Our hire date is the first day of school. So we have many, many teachers with the exact same hire date. Therefore, we need a tie-breaking resolution. And I'm happy to speak to that, but you see it there before you. You essentially earn points for other credential authorizations that you may possess.
So can I ask questions about this? Yes? So having gotten my teaching credential fairly recently, 9 years ago, 10 years ago, are some of those accreditations still issued? B-CLAD, CLAD, ELL authorizations? I thought the ELL was embedded into the credential.
They're embedded in credentials, but
okay.
But somebody could be hired
from a
by
long
us.
time.
I mean,
Okay.
We don't hire just first-year teachers, as you know,
Right,
first-year
right.
teachers out of school. So, for instance, if you hired me as a teacher, I would have some of those antiquated authorizations.
Or you
on my
might not.
credential. Or I might not.
Okay.
Yeah. But I, even though I'm a veteran teacher somewhere else, I'm a first-year teacher in the TAM district.
So for clarity, I think I'm just going to bring this up because Tara had explained this to me. I had a question a week or so ago. And I guess the idea is if you have two teachers, and by having a teacher that has more than one credential, and sometimes you'll have a teacher as a credential in math as well as that can also teach English, It just provides the district with more flexibility with moving that teacher around where the needs are in light of what we're facing with trying to be as efficient as possible. That's why they would have a different ranking.
Or even if you just have a single subject credential, but you have a B-CLAD, which is essentially a bilingual certificate.
I see. Okay.
That would
that's
give
helpful.
you, an extra 2 points if again, there were two persons possessing the same credential with the same hire date.
See, I didn't know what B-CLAD stood for, I realize.
Cross-cultural language acquisition and development.
Why didn't I know that?
Say that 3 times quickly.
Okay. Oh, that's why. I'll go with that idea. Yeah. Okay. This is helpful. Thank you. It's good to know there's a objective process.
And there are times, as you see in point number 5, there are times when you go through the process and it's still a tie, and then it's a lottery.
Right. That's pretty tough.
Yeah.
Barbara, did you have any question? Okay. Okay, so I think we're ready for public comment on this item now. Any public comment to discuss Resolution 18-17? Okay, seeing none, I think I'll ask for a motion.
So moved.
To adopt Resolution 18-17. Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, waive a roll call vote.
Roll call. Ms. Owens?
Aye.
Ms. Rhodes?
Aye.
Mr. Oppenheim?
Aye.
Mr. Saavedra?
Aye.
And Ms. Carpenter?
Aye. Thank you, Mary. That passed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lars. Appreciate that. And now we go to our item D, which is discuss and take action on the 2018-19 Comprehensive School Site Safety Plans. And we have Wes Cedros to present.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, Wes.
I think you've all had time to review the safety plans, and I'm more than willing to take any questions that the board or the student trustees have about the safety plans or the process.
So just for edification for some people who might not have been on the board earlier, we did a fairly comprehensive overview of safety plans in
September.
And this is something that's done every year at this time?
From now on, it will be done every year at this time.
Okay. Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there was, I mean, very briefly, these were required to be approved by the board up through the 2008-2009 school year to receive certain monies for school site safety. The last time I can find that what you see before you, these types of school site safety plans were presented to the board was in 2010, and then an update or a report in 2013 without these similar attachments. So went through, revised everything, updated everything, and now as part of the law that changed in 2018 and went into effect on January 1st of this year, it is required that we bring these for board approval. So I think that has always been best practice, but it hasn't been done in our focus. I think in the district had shifted to the emergency preparedness plans, so kind of the practical what to do in case of plans. So this represents a shift to get back on track doing that.
So great. I'm glad the law is requiring it again, because this is hold sites accountable and can tweak and improve as things have happened on campus or developments.
Yeah,
so I think it's
from
good.
this point on, it should be a fairly easy revision process.
Great.
As Tamascala and San Andreas are so small and so different from comprehensive high schools, is there sort of a difference between safety plans that are in place?
No, not really. The bulk of the body of these safety plans have to do with board policy, which applies across all 5 of our sites. There will be differences, though, in the execution of the emergency procedures at the smaller sites, but the same basic rules or procedures apply. So, yeah, it's a good question.
Any other comments? Do we have public comment on this item, the school safety plans? Okay, no public comment. Is there a motion to approve the comprehensive school safety plans?
So moved.
I need to bring a pot of coffee right about now. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you.
I just want to say quickly to thank you to Wes, because this was a huge undertaking. So thank you for all
Yeah,
the time
thank
and
you,
effort,
Wes.
Wes. We appreciate it.
No, you're already stretched very thin.
If we're going public, I would like to acknowledge the work of my assistant, Kaylee Cloney, because she put in a lot of work on this as well.
That's very nice. Thank you. So now we move on to our almost last item, which is the trustee reports. And this is a time that we will not have a big discussion, but it's a time for trustees to make announcements regarding various matters of interest to the fellow board members. So Kevin, do you have anything you want to share?
Not this week.
How about you, Dan?
No, attended the Legislative Action Committee, but
Okay.
nothing so eventful from that session.
Okay.
Nothing new.
Okay. Cynthia, do you have anything to report?
Looking forward to attending a presentation at the Commonwealth Club on Monday night regarding whether technology is an addiction for teens.
Oh.
So I'll be reporting back for
Do they have
that.
one for adults?
There will be adults in the audience, so I'll be, as a flip phone person, I'll be watching to see who's on their smartphones. And I'll report at the March 12th meeting.
Very good. Barbara, do you have anything to report?
Do? The student trustees and I met together for a meeting. It was very productive and very encouraging. I'm so impressed with their commitment and all their efforts at their school sites. That'll be ongoing, and there will be more opportunities, I think, for you to go into the community and represent our schools, and I thank you for that. Also attended JLAC as CSBA rep. Would say about same, not as much progress perhaps as we had hoped. I wanted to comment that I attend the Efficiency Committee, Education
Effectiveness.
Thank you, Effectiveness, with Tara, and that precedes the JLAC meeting. And I want to point out, we've had community members say, why not consolidate? We have, through the county office, we have worked the past 10 years, actually, to reconsider possible consolidations. They're very complicated, not easy to pull off. Everybody wants to have their voice, and that is what is established in our state, local control. However, I would like to point out with my visual aid that the county has worked with all of the school districts to address, it looks like at least 30 areas where we share resources and committee work and action. So there's been an ongoing effort, very active effort, and the Effectiveness Committee works on these items, drug education, housing, and again, reminding us that we have worked on consolidation. So we are working in concert and with the state to increase revenues, to be more efficient in our work. Just want to comment too, I'm encouraged by, we made a pitch at State SARB. This may be more educator related, but the LCAP has only takes a K-8 chronic absence data, which is useless to us. We have nothing. So I'm working with State SARB to get that piece put into the requirement, because we are the last step here. And I think they're hearing it, and we're going to make recommendations to the state in that regard. A lot of agreement at the last state SARB meeting. So thank you.
So you're referring to the dashboard that was
the dashboard,
reported?
yes.
Okay. Well, thank you, Barbara. I don't have anything to share with.
Can I ask just a clarifying
Sure.
question,
Absolutely.
Barbara? So, because we're not advocating for consolidation of districts, right? So
Community.
Right. So, well, people in the
Members.
community have asked, and there is, as you said, a whole complicated process, including getting the state approval, getting voters to agree, figuring out what to do with parcel taxes, right, that support different communities at different levels. And so you said that the county is working on its coordination of services, not consolidation.
Excuse
Yes.
me, coordination.
Yeah,
of
I just wanted to
services.
clarify that.
Absolutely, thank you. Yes.
Very good. Thank you. So now we move on to public comment for any item that is not on the agenda. So any public comment on something that is not officially on the agenda tonight? You sure? Okay. Thank you very much. The meeting, oh, no. Oh, I almost got in trouble. So I almost didn't follow our norms. I almost just, so at this point, I was supposed to have been taking notes on how we were doing with our norms. Okay, observation is that I think as a governance team, one thing that we did very well was that when the board, probably we individually communicated with Tara and Corbett, realized that there was confusion in the community about some of the material that was being published, that there was a very quick response to incorporate that information in the presentation. I think it went a long way. So I think that was something that we did really well. And in terms of any area that we could grow and do better, the board president could keep track of what item we're on a little bit better. I was having trouble there. Oh, is it? I'm trying to look for what it was. Anyway. Okay, no grows.
I'd suggest more sense of humor, but.
Oh.
I do not suggest that.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Meeting adjourned.